which है?
Don't go live right now.
Okay, wait. Okay, I went live and
It's okay, leave it be. That's just new.
Let it be. Just send the YouTube link on WhatsApp so that.
Just a second, I'm sending it. Ito. Got it. Very I send the YouTube live link on the group.
okay, that's done. This is done.
Ami, took a part. Where are you? Oh, it's
I
not.
actually need to get into the metro, so I'll just get back to you guys. All the best. Bye-bye.
Okay, let's at least admit Sneha. Sneha, please rename yourself from dad.
Just a reminder, this meeting is now being live streamed. I'd like to say hello to all the viewers on YouTube. We'll be starting in a few minutes. Okay, I'm admitting all our participants. Is that okay?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, cool. We'll be starting in 2 minutes, so if all the participants could please bear with us. Okay, so no more delay, we'll be starting off with the meeting. So welcome everyone to the ICMR arena. This is a webinar hosted by us at SAMSA to educate you, those who are interested in pursuing the ICMR STS project. And for you, we have got two quite eminent speakers with us. First, I'd like to introduce you to Shirish Rao. He's a third year MBA student of SDS Medical College and KM Hospital and the former senior secretary of Aspire. He has a keen interest in research, leading him to become the first author of a major publication and the co-author in over 16 research projects. He believes in making a change with his research, with one of his community-based study in Dadar finding a place in the Times of India, Maharashtra. He is an adept leader, having found his way in holding several major influential positions, including but not limited to the chief organizer of Confluence 21 and the coordinator and founding member of Rescue, a project to promote healthy screen time among students of Mumbai. When he's not busy analyzing data and writing papers, he is a science teacher for Vector, an NGO with a mission to improve early education of the underprivileged children. He finds an escape from his busy schedule in the worlds of nonfiction, sketching, strumming the guitar, and hiking the unknown trails. We are proud to have Shirish on board with us for the ICMR arena to share his expert knowledge to all of the budding research enthusiasts. Shirish, if you could, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, and on the other hand, we have Shumanto Majumdar, known to me as Shumanto Da. He is a medico, a coder, a musician, a filmmaker, a fitness freak, a research enthusiast, and the list goes on. A final year MBBS student of ESI Postgraduate Institute of Medical Research, Joka, Kolkata, and the former IT Secretary of SAMSA. Shumantoda has been the recipient of the ICMR STS in 2019 and part of numerous publications, being the primary researchers in 2 and co-investigator in 4 such papers. He has also been associated with CRI in various parts of Kolkata, and when he's not playing around with data, he plays the guitar and the synthesizer and is quite adept at producing music. Dada is also very adept at coding and aspires to pitch in more to the medtech industry, which is evident through the multiple medical hackathons he has participated in. It is an honor to have you, Shumantoda, with us in this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you for this lovely introduction, and thanks a lot. So, should we begin?
Yes, Dada.
Cool. So firstly, so the first disclaimer is I'm not associated with ICMR, although I'm giving this presentation, and no incentives, hence there's totally biased list. And yeah, so let's begin. So you got the introduction. I'm Shumanto, and you can find me at the rate Dr.Robot_007. That's my Insta ID. So let's get the ball rolling. The question is, what is ICMR? So according to them, ICMR is a short-term studentship, like it's a program by ICMR where the objective is to implant the seed of research in the medical students. It's usually a small project and it lasts for at least 1 month and should be less than 2 months. So the question is, what are your advantages? The first is the 50,000 stipend, which you get for all your hard work. Trust me, it's a lot of work. Secondly, when you are going abroad, you would not require a letter of recommendation from your college because ICMR would itself give you one. Then you would get a distinguished respect from your colleagues, from your medical fraternity, and then you can gain knowledge about conducting a research and then document it, and thereby you can get publications. And with time, the more number of publications you do, the longer your CV would be. although it should be less than 2 pages, but yeah. So if you do a SWOT analysis of the project, you'd realize that you can get a lot of knowledge about research. You can get a recommendation letter, but then you will end up spending a lot of time and not studying for your profs. And there are a lot of logistic issues which you might need to handle. But then in the end, you're getting up the opportunity to work in a totally new field, and that opens the door of possibilities. So the eligibility criteria for STS is like you have to be a student of MBBS or BDS in a medical college from and between first and fourth year before appearing in your fourth year final prof examinations, and should not have your last year's STS project approved. Paramedical, dental, non-medical students of other courses are not eligible. So the point is you don't need to be Sheldon Ross or Dwight to be researching. And so research is a creative, systematic work undertaken to increase the stock of knowledge, like this is the Wikipedia definition, and it involves the collection, organization, and analysis of information to increase the understanding of a topic or issue. It can involve expansion of past work on the field. We'll go into more details of research in the as the webinar progresses. So let's come back to the STS timeline. This is the official timeline, which is there on the website, but then it's not being followed thanks to COVID. So the roadmap is first you need to register, then you need to give your proposal, then you need to research and prepare your reports, then you need to submit your report, and finally you'll get your results and the certificate from ICMR, and meanwhile you need to start publishing it in one of your known, or I'd prefer an index journal. So the basic timeline according to me is first you start registration in January. The official deadline for submission of research proposal is 21st of February 2022. However, you need to register before 11th of February 22. Then you need to get your ethics approval from your college. It's gonna take some time, so I'd request you to start getting your ethics approval before the ICMR proposal review results come out. But then it varies from college to college. Then you can do your research in any 2 months before September. And as your research is finishing, you can start with the analysis and report writing in, let's say, August or September. And you need to submit your report to ICMR by November. The dates would be given out later. It has not yet been put up on the site. So the process, just explain, like I explained before, first, when you're registering, you need to enter your student details. It should be your email,
Shumantoda, we are not able to hear you. Okay, yeah.
Am I there?
Yes, you are, but we missed the last minute of your presentation.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. So I assume, did we go into the submission of application proposal?
That if you could redo the slide, please.
Okay, yeah, I'm doing it again.
It got cut off.
Okay, yeah, I'm really sorry. So for registration, first you need to register onto the site with your student details from in a time period between 21st of January till 11th of February. And then the proposal must be submitted by 21st of February along with an application attestation form, and it should be forwarded by your college HOD as well as the dean of your college. And when you like after submitting the proposal, don't throw all the documents away because you would be required to submit the same to get your ethics or research cell approval. Yeah, so this is the site. Like if you click here on the top right, you'd go into the registration portal and you'd be required to fill up your email ID, your name, like the entire student details. Like even a personal details. Like after you submit this, you would be getting, one sec, next slide. Yeah, you'd be getting a confirmation after submitting your personal details, and they would give you a login ID, a reference number, and a password. And I don't know, I found it in my junk folder. Like you, one sec. Yeah, I found this in my junk folder anyway. So you need to check your junk as well as your inbox because it gets lost a lot. And after you get this, you'd be required to log into this portal and you'd be greeted with this. The registration form has like four parts, starting with the registration details, which we filled up when you were registering for the site. Then you would require the guide details, the enclosures, and the proposal itself. The guide has to be a permanent faculty of your college, and he should be there for the entire tenure of your research. You would be required to submit an application registration form. It should have the top title of your research, and it should be signed by the guide, the HOD, as well as the head of institution, the ethics committee. Like they give a clearance certificate, like it varies from college to college, and the proposal. So let's begin with proposals. Everything you begin must like begin with a proposal, at least for the first time, like research proposals. So the question is, what is a proposal? Does anyone want to answer? I don't know if I'm still there or no.
You're still there.
Yeah, so does anyone want to answer this question? Okay, fine. So this is not the proposal I'm talking about. I'm talking about a research proposal. So it's a document written by a researcher that provides detailed description of the proposed program. And according to Mouton 2001, page 44, it's a document that outlines how you propose to undertake your research studies. It should be able to give an overview of the research project so that other people can understand the scope of your research, its significance, its proposed methodology, as well as the research methods which shall be used. And for ICMR, you would be requiring the proposal in the 6 segments, starting with the title, the introduction, the objectives, the methodology, the implications, and the references, which should be in Vancouver style. So also, the first thing is they do not want to create any biases while approving the proposal. So no name or contact details should be provided, and in any case it's mentioned anywhere, they would automatically reject the proposal. And you would require to use the reference ID for all the communication things, include like in case you have any problem or while you're submitting the proposal, everything you would require to use your reference ID. Like for this year, it would start with like ICMR, like 2022 dash 5-digit number. So the first thing which we need to come to is the title of the research. So it should be concise, crisp, and catchy. It should clearly indicate dependent and independent variables. It should provide the keywords for proper indexing, and it should also specify the study population. So let's start with the introduction. The introduction must contain the explanation of the research question, a literature review containing all the arguments towards the gaps you're trying to fill in through the study, your expectation and implication from the study, and the rationale for doing the study. So review of literature should convince the reader that the research is significant, important, or interesting, and we should not be completely satisfied with things presently there on the topic, like on PubMed or wherever you're looking for. You need to convince that the research will fill in some important gap or address limitations or deficiencies. And you need to explain or justify your hypothesis or idea and convince that you have thought it through. So next is the aim. and it's about what you hope to do with your project and the overall intention, and it can be broad, but however, objectives must be specific, and it refers to the goals, and it should be logical, feasible, realistic, defined, and relevant to the study. So in STS, we would only require the primary, max to max secondary objectives, where uh, the primary objectives refer to the expectations to be achieved in general terms, while the secondary are the influences or the inferences from the primary objectives, and ultimate is to bring in some policy change or anything else. So next, the 800 word methodology. So it would define the approach to the question, the research design, the subject, the inclusion and exclusion criteria, how you would like to sample, the control or the comparison group in case you're doing a case control study, what your data needs, what you would use for analysis, be it SPSS or R or whatever you would like to, and then how you would like to interpret the research in case of qualitative or quantitative data, and ethical issues must be addressed in case of certain types of studies. So overall, it should be divided into 4 headings while you're writing it. It should be the overview of approach, the data collection, the data analysis and interpretation. And in case you're using pre-structured, pre-tested questionnaire, your methodology writing would be easier. The implications describe what is expected or what is achieved from the proposed research. It could be given in terms of knowledge gained or in terms of scientific advancements you're expecting from the study. And citations should be written in Vancouver style. And every paper must be quoted to prevent any plagiarism. Plagiarism is basically you're copying somebody else's work and putting your name onto it. And citations should be put into like first brackets, like with the text or as a superscript, and they should be in the order they are mentioned, and it should be kept in the end as references. And Vancouver style is first we have the author, then we have the topic, then we have the subtopic. Like author name is first, surname and then name. After subtopic, we have the place of publication, the publisher, and the year of publication. This is in case of a journal, and it's more or less the same. But the issue is when you're writing a huge proposal, trust me, it feels like lifting 100 kgs. So we always use a citation manager. Like I use Mendeley, and you just need to import the paper onto Mendeley. And when you're just quoting it, you insert a citation, and in the end, it automatically comes in. And when it comes to plagiarism, Turnitin helps me at least for checking how much one paper has been plagiarized from the other side. You can also use Grammarly Premium, I guess. I have no clue about that, but Turnitin is like used over the world. And you can also use a Gantt chart for organizing what you want to do. It's a personal favorite because you have a lot of work and I keep losing track of things to do. So for ICMR, let's come back to the annexures. You would require questionnaire in case you have a questionnaire-based study. You would require informed consent forms, like wherever required, be it from the patient or from the from any other place, and you would require cover letters. So I am here with Kolkata. So whenever you're doing anything for the first time, you'd never know what you're doing, but in the end, you just do it. So mix a little foolishness with your serious plans, and it's lovely to be silly at the right moment. So let's get back to the fact if you have everything in order now. First is the application attestation form must be signed by the guide, HOD, and head of the institution. One guide, a permanent faculty of your college can mentor only one student. And this is what the application attestation form looks like, starting with your reference ID. You'll require a passport size photograph and all the signatures, all places. And next we come back to the portal. The following details would be required for your guide, and then you would require your ethics committee approval, your informed consent forms, case study forms in case they are there, any study questionnaire in case your study is questionnaire based. And your proposal, like when you're submitting it, it should be like your title must be there under 25 words. The type of study must be there. The subject area must be decided from before. And when you finally submit it, you'll look like this. So there are 1,200 like applications for MBBS students, and it's a really big opportunity. And I guess everyone should apply. So thank you, and I would now request Shirish to take over.
Thank you, Shumantara. That was indeed a amazing presentation.
Yeah, I hope
Uh,
nobody's sleeping. So yeah.
Before I start, I would just like to ask audience if they have any questions specifically for you, because I am completely a noob in STS. I have never applied, won't be applying, so don't ask any
Yeah.
STS question for me.
Yeah, and like in case they are not ready, like are you ready with questions or do you want it for
Or
the end?
depends. Organizer, should we have all the questions at the end, or should we get the STS question now? Who can check the
Yeah,
questions in the
please
chat
start
box?
sending your questions in the chat box.
Yeah,
And
it would be
eventually we
better
can-
if we could have the Q&A session at the very end of the webinar.
Works. Okay, so let me start screen sharing. Give me a minute. Is it visible?
Not yet. Yeah, now it is.
Yeah, it's visible now.
Okay, just give me a minute. I'll switch to slideshow and we can start. Yeah. So good evening, everyone who has, like, all the research enthusiasts who have come here to learn more about STS with all your ideas and like how you can pursue your research idea ahead. So I am Shirish, as an introduction was already given to you about the things that I do and what I study and the projects that I do. So from the experience that I have gained through my research journey through the course of this 2 or 3 years, I'll be sharing a few insights on like how to go about original research right from the scratch, like from its ideation to the end publication stage. So I feel ideation is the toughest part for a medical student to come up with. Like, the thing is, how do I choose a research topic, or like what topic do I research upon? So all the enthusiasts who have gathered here, do any of you have any ideas roaming around in your mind? Or like, I want the session to be completely interactive. I want you to keep chipping in with things that you have in mind, even in chat box, or if you want, you can unmute yourself and speak. So I need some ideas to work with. So it would be very helpful if you can put some broad stuff. Also,
Participants, I have allowed you to unmute yourselves and write in the chat box directly.
yeah, and a humble request. Please don't copy anyone else's idea. They have thought a lot about it, so please don't. Yeah, I don't see anything in the chat box. I'll wait for 5 minutes. No ideas? Or like, do you have anything floating in your mind, like what you want to do for STS, or anything that you might have come across while reading or while you were in your wards? Anyone?
Okay, Sneha has directly texted me drug-induced WBC derangements.
Could you get back, please?
Drug-induced white blood cell derangements.
Drug-induced white blood cell derangement. Okay, that's a kind of very specific idea. Fine. Anyone else? Come on, man. There are so many of you. You might have some silly idea bhi chalega. Any topic
Well,
that you are interested in.
I personally had an idea of quality of life in neurofibromatosis patients.
Amazing. So you have your topic in mind, and you have the specific population also in your mind. So that's amazing. Anyone else? Yeah, I see a few things in chat box. Patient satisfaction in OPD. Okay. Favipiravir in COVID-19. Fine. Anything else? cancer-free cigarettes. Okay, kind of a very broad thing. What else? Prevalence of, do you mean uveitis? Uveitis.
I think he's written UTIs.
Oh,
I think he
UTIs.
has written
Oh, urinary
UTIs
tract
in
infections.
diabetic
Okay,
patients.
fine. Okay, great. Etiology of cancer. Okay, great. So one thing that I'm very happy to say is, like, many of the ideas are very clinically driven and very patient centered and not something that is very common. However, there are a few things that you might also notice very commonly. So as we as students come up with ideas that we see around us, or that we kind of hear about more, or a kind of thing that has more noise about in the public. So suppose cancer or cigarettes, tobacco, OPD patients, so COVID-19. So these are common topics. So the thing is, topics are very broad. What we'll learn today is how do we narrow it down to a very specific thing that we can study and come up with something that has been understudied or has not been studied at all. Okay, so so research is basically something what everybody else has seen but nobody has thought about. That's the best research question that you can come up with. So by this, it gives a lot of two aspects into it. What everybody else has seen gives its relevance, its impact that it will have if you research upon it. But the key here is what nobody else has thought, that is the novelty of your research question, the interest that you generate, the new kind of evidence that you generate. That is what makes research a research, because you are searching upon already what exists and trying to add something new to it. Okay, so where do these ideas come from? Like, whoever have put all these ideas, like where did you get these ideas from? Keep putting up message or keep unmuting yourself, whatever. Where did you get these ideas? Like depression in diabetics, did you see few diabetic patients who were depressed, or like what? Other research papers, journals. So you have a habit of reading journals, like you read journals every day? Literature review. Okay, so this is not something that is very common, right? We reading journals and reading scientific literature isn't a very common habit among medical students and isn't expected to be as well. So journals, agreed, are ultimate source of finding or narrowing down your topic to an extent. But from where do you get that spark? Okay, is there anything wrong with this, or is there any change in trend that I'm noticing in this thing? So it comes while get it from your routine. Like as a medical student, we tend to read books, right? So how are these books made? These books are compilations of multiples of research articles that are published in journals, and then they are filtered, analyzed, and then their conclusions are put into our books. However, many of that information is outdated. So while reading the book and comparing it with your outside scenario, like when you visit in the community, is someone trying to say something?
Yeah, I'll take care of that. Someone might be.
You're on mute.
Okay, can I go again? Yeah, when you read up books and then you compare that thing with what is going around in a community, amongst your peers, amongst the patients, someone close in your family is going through it, or some of your friend is going through it. That is a general observation that we have, and from that you try to get into a research question that is like everyone is seeing it but no one is thinking about it. Then other ways is to go and talk to your teachers. Like I read about these things. Is there some different trends that you are noticing in your wards or patients that you are witnessing, or this new thing has come up but we have been reading about these things? So how much is the new thing reliable, or how much has the new thing been studied or investigated. So this is a very crude and a raw way to get an idea. But again, when you start narrowing down, you will have to go to journals, read multiple research articles, do a detailed literature review. So we will come to that. Okay. So what is the scope of all the ideas that you gather? Like, how can you structure this into particular kind of studies? So these ideas can be related to basic research, basic science researches. Basic science researches are basically your first and second year subjects, like your anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, even pathology. A lot of pharmacology is also a part of basic science research, like experimental research, animal studies, etc. So genomics, genetics, these are all parts of basic research studies, like most of the things that happen inside the lab or with those kind of things, right? Clinical trials, fortunately, are not eligible in STS, and like we as students are also not very do not have much of an expertise in conducting that, so we'll leave that for now. Epidemiological research is things that we do in our community medicine, or like to give you a simple idea, prevalence studies of risk factors, studies of incidence, or like basically to get around the history of that disease, like how did that disease originate, what are the factors contributing to the disease, what are the clinical implications of that disease, etc., etc. Everything in and around that disease, from its prevention to control to risk factors, everything. What is social behavioral research? Has two components. One is psychological component, and again a community medicine point of view. So public behavior, prevention, health seeking behaviors, knowledge attitude practices, perceptions, those kind of studies, and like or any other phenomena like vaccine hesitancy. All these things are like in which the patient's behavior is causing something in the medical science, or like the general public's behavior is influencing health sciences. Those kind of topics will go into there. And health service research is something that most students don't try to get in or don't know about. It's mostly about like doing health service. Health service is what we are providing services, like in form of primary healthcare, secondary healthcare. Then how does your hospital run? How does the entire healthcare system in India function? So at various levels, these things need to be evaluated. And you can, at a primary level, what you can do is do an audit of few functioning systems that are going on to your hospitals, like is the ward compliant with the ideal discharge times, or are being OTs utilized appropriately, or is the inpatient system efficiently being utilized, etc., etc. So those are administrative things on which you can research as well. So your research ideas can fit into any of this category, but for the sake of original research, that is that thing that you'll be doing in STS or any original research study, you will be focusing only on observational experimental design. Otherwise, you can do research on, if you want to do research, you need not restrict yourself only to original research. There are other things as well, but today we'll be talking mostly about this. Okay. So what will be your navigation roadmap? So how will you start up? So as I said, how do you ideate? How do you come up with rough or very broad questions? Once you have that broad question in your mind, you will do some broad literature search on it. Okay, don't just go on PubMed and start searching articles for that. I don't like that approach very much. So just do a broad search on it, then discuss these ideas with your colleagues, find a mentor, then start narrowing down even more. Then you will be ready with your final proposals, your questionnaires, your ICT, then you will submit it. Now you will submit it two ways. First, submit it to the ICMR portal proposal, and then all those things you will also submit it to your institutional ethics committee. So they will do a review for 1.5 months, depends how strict your institutional IC is. And then you will finally get an approval, and then you can start your data collection, analyzing things, deriving interpretation, writing the article. So I don't know if the ICMR STS report is exactly same as the article, but it would be kind of the same because it will involve the similar headings like introduction, methodology, results, and discussion. So you will do kind of the same thing once you have gathered all the results, and you will make a report out of it, which you will later publish in some journal. Okay, so this is the basic roadmap of how you will be navigating your journey into the research. But for that, you need to have a good research idea, right? So good research idea is defined by this short acronym that sounds finer. Your ideas have to be refined so that they become very fine. Okay, so the aspects of it are, it has to be feasible, it has to be interesting, it has to be novel, ethical, and relevant. Now, few of these things are interconnected, like interest and relevance. Interest is something that the investigator will have into it, his co-investigators, his colleagues will have into it, and relevance is more of a broader term into the scientific context. How much contribution will your particular study will make, or how much impact will it have, to what time relevance it is happening. Like अभी COVID चल रहा है, COVID से related research करेंगे पड़ेगा, but उसकी वजह से over researching हो गया. But let's just an example for that, कि like how relevant you see, how relevant or how much impact can your that research question make is the key. Okay, personal interest is required, otherwise you will like stop doing that study after a while, because trust me, it does take efforts out of you, out of your routine medical schedule, to keep pursuing it even after many bureaucratic hurdles. Okay, so feasibility and ethical concerns. So as medical students, ICMR encourages you to take studies which can be easily done by medical students. So feasibility is like, you can restrict your study to your own hospital in which you have good patient access, you have access to or you can also go into the field practice area of your community medicine department and do a study there. So feasibility is basically ki tum akele, like in ICMR STS you have to do it alone, there is no other student that can be part of it. So how much of it can you do it alone? So that you have to take into account. Money ICMR is providing, but apart from that, what are other concerns? Like, do you have expertise in that particular thing? Like subject expertise, the guide will provide, but the research design expertise, the expertise of doing analysis, etc., you will have to learn that gradually. Okay. Then ethical constraints are, again, there are a lot of populations which we need to take care about. Like those are called as vulnerable populations. Like studies done on pregnant women, studies done on young children, HIV positive patients, cancer patients, terminally ill patients, illiterate patients. These require special considerations to be taken up, and you have to ensure your ethics committee ki ye sari cheezein hum dekh rahe hain. Then comes the point of consenting and stuff. So you have to take all those things into account कि मतलब मैं इतना सब कर सकता हूँ या कर सकती हूँ क्या, and then only you see कि can you go ahead with it. Like if any one of this factor is also missing, your research can become like kind of not that great, because ethical constraints will stop you from doing the research, feasibility will again stop you from doing research, relevance will enhance your quality of research, and novelty will be the central key factor of your research that will make your research stand out from what already exists. So we will extrapolate more now on the novelty. So how will you look for novelty? By literature search. So literature search mein, most of you who are there here, what would be your strategy for literature search? Like from where will you see कि मैं जो सोच रहा हूँ कि like suppose मैंने cancer and या cancer free tobacco के बारे में कुछ सोचा, या if I thought anything about depression in diabetes patients or anything, how will I see कि whatever I'm trying to study is already existing or not? Keep putting things up in the chat box. Like from where will you find things out? Okay. Like when I say the term literature review, like from where will you review this literature? Okay, PubMed. Anything else? Anything else that you can think of? Most simple way. Google Scholar. Okay. Okay, so these are research kit. Great. So these are a few common platforms that are utilized for literature search. But one of my tip would be, before going to any of these platforms, just type the exact same question that you have in your mind randomly on Google. Okay, first put it directly on Google, because that will tell you if to what like if something on that exists or not. Okay, write exactly how it is, or have some different permutation combinations. Like how do e-cigarettes have cancer implications, or have cigarettes been developed which do not have cancer implications, etc., etc. You will find something or the other done there. Okay, and once you have some relevance, okay, then Google will help you find one of the very relevant article related to exactly your topic. Okay, then go to that article and read its references as well. Do cross referencing, read what all articles that they have gone through. This is called as the primary literature search, to get an idea कि तुम्हारा जो basically topic है उसपे क्या exist करता है और क्या नहीं, on a very broad basis. Then you go to PubMed, adopt a better search strategy, use keywords, mesh terms apply karo, and then find all possible papers that are there. Okay, that will give you all possible papers, more and more papers which are there, which you might not have found in your primary search. But this primary search will give you an idea ki, is your idea worth pursuing ahead, or will give you a direction ki, in what direction you have to go and pursue it ahead. Okay. So yeah, so what will you do after you have searched your literature? So once you gather some basic idea in your mind, okay, मैं ये सोच रहा था, or I was thinking this, but something like this already exists, or this has been done to this much extent. So you will modify things in your mind according to what exists and what doesn't, and then you will discuss whatever you have found out with senior faculty members, your peers, your like co-researchers, senior researchers, laymen, lay people, students, etc., and also with a very, very important person named statistician. You will find a statistician in mostly community medicine or PSM department of your college. He may or may not be very compliant, but do try to consult him with regard to sample size, sampling technique, data analysis methods, variables, study tools, etc. And just be sure कि go with a good thing in your head कि मुझे ये derive करना है. So that accordingly he will suggest you things कि how do you go about it. Because if you don't consult statistician and you don't come up with a good sample, appropriate sample size, and then you don't have appropriate analysis methods, then your research is flawed, because it is not of any use. You have the data, but you don't know how to analyze it, or you have collected data in a way that it cannot be analyzed. So don't regret later. So consult statistician, then analyze all of their inputs, and then choose what can be done out of it. Like look for those limitations, look for feasibility, look for other variables, look what you have, what others can contribute, etc. Then what you need to do is, then you have to structure all, like while you are thinking this, to structure your ideas, there are a few questions that I'll give you that will help you structure your ideas into how you go about it. So it will give you what is your problem. Okay, so your problem becomes your core research idea. Okay, suppose the problem is cigarettes cause cancer. So are there cigarettes which do not cause cancer, or are there e-cigarettes which do not cause cancer? Suppose just a why is it important to solve? Why is it important to solve gives you a relevance to the study, and while you're writing your proposal, it forms your rationale and further implications. Ki, like already kya exist karta hai, what new things are you going to add through this, and once you add this, what change will it give? Okay, so how the previous studies have tried to address this problem. Okay, so in the next few slides we will see how to find that research gap. Okay, or how to see whether your idea is novel or not. Next is, how do you plan to solve it? How do you plan to solve it will form your, in the proposal it will form your objectives, and objectives are not equivalent to your research idea or your research question. They are very, very specific and they need to be measurable. Okay, then you adopt your methodology. I will talk something about like which methodological designs can be used and what, etc., like cross-sectional or other study designs which are there. I'll talk about them later. So there has to be a plan, like what can you do better from what already exists. Okay, and then again, what are your ethical and feasibility concerns? As I mentioned earlier, those will become your limitations and you will have to accept it. You cannot say कि मैंने जो study किया है, that is the ultimate study that can be done regarding this topic in the whole world. There will always be limitations and you will have to declare those in your paper, as well as have that in back of your mind कि these things are things that I have not been able to study or were not studied by me and needs to be studied by someone else. Okay. So how do you find research gaps? So I have spoken a lot about novelty, literature search, but what exactly do you look for in the literature search? What is research gap? Does anyone have that in mind? Or like how do you find it? Anyone? I don't see anything. Fine. So to find out what is known, you did a primary literature search. That will tell you whether the problem is attempted or not. And for most of the time, like 99.99% of the time, it would have been attempted by at least one person in this entire world. Okay, so it would have been attempted. In case you think that your idea has not been attempted by anyone in this world, and it like if there can be a case that someone is attempting it but it's not there on internet. Okay, so if you feel that it has not been attempted, see can it be solved, because it would be very hard to solve it if it has not been solved by been attempted by anyone in the world. But if once you start looking for anything that is not attempted, so then see to what extent it has been attempted. Like, is it fully solved? Then how much? Then you see into the applicability part, and then you can evaluate or research on its applicability parts. Suppose newer drugs have been accepted or newer patient guidelines have been implicated, evidence-based strategies have been implicated, everything has been proven, it's there in research, like new guidelines for health policies have been provided or new criticisms have been provided in academic literature, but that is not being implicated or it is not coming into execution. Then you can do a research on finding what are the barriers or what are the roadblocks in that particular thing, or to what extent it is being implicated. You can do a research on that. Okay, if the problem is partly solved, then the key thing comes, look for limitations of the studies, and those limitations can you overcome. If you cannot, then take a different topic or try to modify it in such a way that it becomes kind of novel for you. And then again, if people have attempted it and it has not successfully been done, then search can you make it better. Okay, so how do we generate better evidence? Okay, or what do you mean by this? What do I mean by this term evidence at all? Okay, so there is a pyramid of evidence that we say in the field of research. So there are different types of studies that can be undertaken. So the gold standard of which are randomized control trials and meta-analysis, none of which are eligible to be done in ICMR STS. So we will leave that. Okay, the lower down are case series and case report, again not eligible in ICMR STS, so we'll leave those aside. What we will focus on is cross-sectional studies, case control studies, and cohort kind of study designs. There are other experimental designs apart from randomized control trials, which are interventional studies, but they are not controlled randomized trials. So you can also do interventional studies, but they need not be controlled trials. Okay, so they are ranked in a specific order. So when you think of an idea, just see what kind of studies are already done on it. Okay, this is like this top order, the gold standard is required for you basically in the literature search. Like whatever you're trying to study, if there is already a meta-analysis, systematic review existing on it, there is no point of you adding more, because what you will be able to do is a cross-sectional or at most a case control or cohort study. And what has been produced already has a greater evidence. So you are not contributing anything more to what already exists. You have to do something that is contributing something to the existing knowledge. Okay, so these kind of studies will not add much of novelty to it. there might be relevance, but there might not be any novelty because something has been already studied to a huge extent. I'll just give you what happens in the systematic reviews and meta-analysis. The PubMed search strategy that I told, if I search something on PubMed related to, suppose depression and diabetes, and suppose 5,000, 6,000 papers come up, these people go through all of these papers and come to one single conclusion. Like many of these papers have different study designs, may have different conclusion, but they will filter it out and write up an article stating that what is the final conclusion of all the evidence that exists in all the 6,000 researches. So compared to that, if you're going to say, okay, if this has been done, I will do a study to find what is happening in my college or what is happening in my locality, that will not add much significance to it. Okay, so look for things. If a cross-sectional study has been done, see if you can do a case control or a cohort kind of a study. Okay, most the feasible study designs which you can use for your original research projects are, the simplest one is a cross-sectional study design, but I would encourage you to go into at least case control, because it's a very easy design to go into, will generate a much better evidence. Then if time permits, because cohort studies are kind of long-term studies and cannot be completed in a year, so again not very suitable for a STS project. But if you're looking to generate a very good quality of evidence and you have that kind of research idea in your mind, then you can do that project out of your STS project as well. Okay, so cross-sectional and case control studies are there, and there can be interventional studies which need not be trials. Okay, the intervention that you will be doing may not be administering drug in a person or doing some clinical intervention to him. Okay, because as medical students you cannot do any clinical intervention on any patient, but you can do non-clinical intervention, or you can have the guide do those intervention on them, and those can be pursued as trials. Okay, you can so they can be pre-test, post-test kinds of interventional studies, like you administer a questionnaire and then you do some behavioral intervention. Now the behavioral intervention does not mean you show them one PPT or a seminar and then you see whether their knowledge attitude has increased immediately. No, the behavioral intervention has to be, that intervention has to be structured, studied, validated by experts, and then that thing will make sense. And that has to be studied for again at least 6 or 7 months. These are kind of things that you will have to see based on your feasibility and level of evidence that already exists. So that will provide novelty to your study. So am I clear in this novelty part? Because this is the key thing of your research question. If you have any doubts, ask now itself. Anyone has any doubts? Then, because I spoke a lot of things, so many of things might have gone over your head. So if you want to ask anything, you may. Okay, I guess I taught it well. What is a quasi-randomized randomized trial? So again, it's an experimental kind of design only. So it's again a pre-test, post-test kind of thing, but it is not randomized. Oh, sorry, it does not have a control group with it, right? So in a single wing, you are studying the intervention that has happened. I don't think quasi randomized trial जैसा कुछ होता है, because quasi experimental study होती है.
I think what she means is like quasi randomized, like randomized allocation of the trial, like of the subject to the different arms of the trial.
But then
like different study
there
groups
is a control group, right? If there are two groups, then one is the study group and one is the control group, and that becomes a randomized control trial, right?
Yeah.
So there is a quasi experimental study design that I know, because there is no randomization, but then there are two groups which are studied simultaneously. Then you can have single group which can be studied pre-test, post-test, like that you can study. is control group needed in a CAP study? You can have it. See, in a CAP study, if you are doing an interventional CAP study, like a pre-test, post-test kind of a thing, then you may or may not need it. Depends on your feasibility. You can have it, like it's good to have, but not necessary to have. Am I making sense? I guess. What is the ideal strength of population for 2 months long project? Okay, so strength of population, like I'll come to that sampling technique part. So I'll explain you then and there itself. How do you want to, like, how many patients do you have to recruit or population you have to recruit? Okay, anything else? Okay, I'll go ahead. So now we come to the key thing कि हमने इतना कुछ search कर लिया, इतना कुछ देख लिया. Now to translate that whole thing that I have searched and discussed with so many things into a proposal, I need to have a research question in mind. So research question is formed by this particular formula that many of the researchers use. It's called the Picot or a Pecot criteria. Okay, so you can have an intervention, or if it's an observational study, it becomes a risk factor or an exposure. Suppose, to give you an example, like factors associated with tobacco addiction, like prevalence of tobacco addiction becomes one thing, and factors associated with it becomes your exposure or the factor that you are studying. Okay, interventional is effect of motivational training on students to increase their participation in research. So the intervention is your behavioral motivational training. Fine. So whenever you are coming up with a question, now there were so many broad topics that you put up, right? Ki depression in patients, or quality of life in neurofibromatosis. So quality of life becomes your what is your quality of life? Okay, quality of life is your outcome. Your exposure is your exposure and population are here kind of overlapping, because neurofibromatosis is exposure to that particular patient, but your population also are all the patients who have neurofibromatosis. There is no control group that we are studying, but we can compare it to some other group, like what is the difference in quality of life between a patient who has neurofibromatosis and the patient who does not. And time frame need not necessarily be there always. Okay, instead you can restrict your research question using place of study, like in the population of Mumbai, or population of Kolkata, population of Chennai, Bangalore, anywhere. Like what are the trends of this particular thing in that particular city? You can do that. So for, like, I would like to do this small exercise. For your research questions or research topics that you had in your mind, can you formulate good research questions and put it out on the chat box, or unmute yourself and speak? This will help you get a very good idea of where, like, if you have understood whatever I have spoken till now. Okay, we'll have kind of a 5-minute break where you can think on how you can narrow it down. And we'll not talk about novelty and stuff right now, because that might be a studied topic, but you need to know how you can narrow your topic down.
Meanwhile, I'd like to ask the participants if they have any questions, you can put it down there in the chat box. We can come back to them once the webinar, like the speeches are over.
Yeah, and you need not DM it to me. You can, okay, you can DM it to me because it might be private. Okay, I'll just see. Analysis of patient with respect to. Okay, so patient experience becomes your outcome. Exposure is like with respect to what is happening. What is the doctor, what doctor infrastructure, those are your factors. And patients experience. Okay, so now will you be studying all the OPDs or specific OPDs? That you have to narrow it down, because there are multiple OPDs in the hospitals of multiple departments. So you will have to narrow it down there, and then it becomes OPD. And how many of those hospitals would you be including in your study? So ideally for STS you will be able to include one. So it will become a patient experience in surgery, pediatrics, medicine, OPD, with regard to available doctors and infrastructure of a tertiary care hospital, right? In which city? It becomes kind of that. So narrow it down based on how many centers are there, what kind of patients are using, from where, which all places are you recruiting those patients. Amazing. So anyone else? Like, we will take at least 2 to 3 examples so that it is easy for you to get a hold of it. Is anyone putting anything on YouTube live chat or anything?
Well, we had a question to repeat what type of studies can be done for STS.
Okay,
Cross section dot. I guess the person missed that part.
Okay, I'll just go back. This cross sectional studies, case control studies, cohort short term, one year cohort study कर सकते हैं कि मतलब 1 year के अंदर जो analysis हुआ वो, या 6 months 8 months का. Interventional studies कर सकते हैं. Interventional studies would be good. Single arm studies करो, pre-test post-test, या 2 arm भी कर रहे हो, so you need not necessarily randomize them, need not have very high-fi intervention into place. Some jugado interventions can be there, low resource interventions can be there, those can be studied. Okay.
Just a minor correction, no intervention is allowed.
No intervention is allowed in STS.
No interventions or clinical trials.
Okay, but last year one of my batchmates interventional study got accepted. It was an educational intervention.
No,
it was not a
educational intervention. Like you cannot do any drugs or any other
absolutely drugs नहीं, मैं वही बोला, behavioral intervention तुम कर सकते हो.
behavioral intervention कर सकते हो.
हाँ, so behavioral interventions you can use. What is this? During COVID pandemic. Okay, but again, if upsurge of use of health supplements among whom, who reside where, and in what timeline? COVID-19 pandemic was very long. Like now you need to specify in which wave of COVID-19 pandemic. We have had so many waves, right? So health supplements is a very broad topic, but yes, health supplements can be one of the. Then in which kind of population and for what duration are you studying them? Like COVID pandemic started in 2019. So are you doing a retrospective analysis or a prospective one? You can mention that. Okay. If there is nothing more, then I'll move ahead. So then, as Shumanta also gave an idea of like how you need to have objectives for your proposal. Okay, so there is a short formula that one of my seniors gave it to me, and I'm putting it up to you. So your objectives have to be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time bound. But more importantly, how will you write this particular objectives? Because we tend to write very general objectives. Suppose I want to study this health supplement use. So I'll just write it as same key, like prevalence, like objective becomes to study the prevalence of health supplement use during the COVID-19 pandemic. But you need to have certain components or certain verbs or things into the place in the objective. So your objective always starts with to determine, to assess, to find, to describe, to identify, to compare these things. Okay. And with what do you want to do it? Key like variable. Variable becomes again key whatever you are studying, key, your outcome and exposure. Both those two things are your variables. Then you write the population, or then you write the method through which you are achieving it. Key using a self-designed questionnaire, or using this scale, or using that particular instrument. Okay, so usse kya hota hai, you can write particularly about that, and that frames your objective. And difference between primary and secondary is that only, like primary is the thing based on which your whole research is designed, and secondary is key based on the questionnaires etc that you have found. Apart from your primary question, what else can you explore out of the data that you have? So what else will you be generating apart from the primary thing that you are looking for? Extra associations, additional correlations, like associations with demographics, associations with place of residence etc that you can look for. Okay, so coming to the most commonly used study tools that most of us as medical students use, that are questionnaires and scales for any particular thing. So what we tend to do is, if we have some question in our mind, we directly start formulating a questionnaire then and there itself, and that has a lot of flaws, because designing a questionnaire is not as simple a thing as it looks. You write a questionnaire, you circulate it on WhatsApp, you get responses. That's not how research works. It has to be validated. It has to go through a process of validation, and that takes some time. Okay, so an easier way would be to look for, like when you're doing literature search, look for studies which have used such questionnaires already, and see whether this questionnaires and scales, suppose there are depression scales available, sleep quality scales available, multiple scales are already available with good reliability. So you have to see whether these scales are available in public domain or they have a copyright. Many of the very commonly used psychiatric scales are available in public domain, but many of them might not be as well. So you have to do a simple thing, just mail the author and request for using that particular instrument into your study. Okay, the mail ID is provided of the corresponding author then and there itself, like in the article. So you just have to mail that person. Then there will be multiple scales available. There might be 10 to 15 scales available for assessing sleep quality or depression or quality of life. Many are there. So a easier way is to see which one is the most commonly used one, or which one is approved by a higher authority. Like if there is a WHO scale available, WHO Proforma or WHO scale is available, just go for that. But if there is nothing as such, then look for variables like sensitivity, specificity, Cronbach alpha, content validity, etc. I'm just mentioning the words here. You can go back and read up on those key, like how are they and on what basis they are derived. Then apart from that questionnaire, if you want to add any additional variables, like you want to study more demographic correlates, or you want to add more variables to it apart from whatever is there, you cannot modify that scale, but you can have a separate semi-structured proforma or a questionnaire which you can get validated. Okay, and if nothing of that works out, you are designing something for entirely new thing. For suppose like COVID vaccine hesitancy scale might not be there, and you are trying to do a study on it, then you will have to design an own questionnaire for it. So how do you go about designing your own questionnaire? So an idea comes up, you can write rough questions for it, then again do thorough literature search, see what variables are studied, what are understudied. Then this is the most important step. Don't make the questionnaire based on your own ideas and perceptions. Your questionnaire has to be applicable to the participants whom you're giving it to. Okay, and there are a lot more things that you might not know, that even your guide might not be aware of. So you have to have either a focus group discussion in which you have like 10 to 15 people, or even can be less than that as well, but ideally more 10 to 15 people into a group discussion and discuss about what are the problems regarding that, what has to be studied, what needs to be studied, in what form that questions need to be kept, or what all variables need to be included in that question, and what new things can you expect from the patients. All those things you get a discussion out of it. If you cannot conduct a focus group discussion, you can directly go and interview a few faculty members as well as your target audience. Suppose your target audience are HIV patients, or your target audience are, suppose, patients visiting surgery OPD. Then you, whatever your research question is there, just go and ask it to few of your participants itself. So you will see कि जो तुम सोच रहे हो शायद वैसा है नहीं, या जो तुम सोच रहे हो उससे कहीं ज्यादा बहुत कुछ है. Okay, so do that. And once you have framed a rough questionnaire, do a pilot survey as well to see कि उनको वो question समझ रहा है, वो questions readable है, वो question को applicable है, etc. काफी चीजें वो study करनी पड़ती है. ठीक है? And accordingly, like when you are forming that things, use appropriate kind of things. Like multiple questions of open-ended नहीं छोड़ सकते, otherwise you'll not be able to analyze it. Use Likert scale wherever possible, otherwise you won't be able to quantify your data. Most of your data will be categorical and you will be only able to present it in the form of percentages. So if you want to correlate a few things or find some scores, mean values, then you will have to use Likert scales into it. Okay. Then if you're forming a new scale, make sure you get its content validation done, otherwise publication nahi hota, kyunki journals ask if that scale is validated or not. So the process of it is very simple. You give the questionnaire to 5 experts and tell them to rate each of the question as from 1 to 3. 1 is not required, then 0, 1 and 2. 0 is not required, 1 is essential, 2 is very essential. So according to that, everything would be scored, and once everything is scored, you have to divide it. मतलब total score से तुम्हारा score कितना है, and that ratio has to be greater than 0.65. Then your instrument is at least valid. कि तुम जो assess करना चाहते हो, that is there in that thing. Okay, so that can be studied there. And then another important perspective that, can you please explain a bit about Likert scale? Okay, I'll go back. Okay, so basically Likert scale is key. You give a statement to the participant key, and this type of, there are 2 kinds of Likert scale which are used most commonly. One is the likelihood one and one is the how often one. Okay, there are 2 ones. मतलब एक time based है और एक likelihood based. You will give a disclaimer on the beginning. Rate the following question from 1 to 5 or 0 to 5 based on how likely you are, or how much do you agree to this statement, or how often these things, how often do you feel this, or how often do you do this, right? So when it comes to how often, then that rating would become like rarely, often, sometimes, frequently, every time, like that. Agreeable comes to strongly disagree, neither disagree nor agree. वैसा करके it comes to a 5 scale. Always use an odd point Likert scale. Never use an even point Likert scale. Use a 5-pointer, 3-pointer, 7-pointer. Don't use 4, 6. Ideally not. 7 and 5 are good. So don't go beyond 7 as well. Otherwise, लोग वो समझता नहीं क्या rate करना है, then false values आ जाती है. So 5 to 7 are good. Content validation is basically, validation means the thing that your tool is meant for, will it be able to do it? Okay, if you're assessing treatment seeking behavior of the patient, the question that you're asking, does it mean that, like, does the question give you the answer that the patient would be giving? So in that, you make a rough questionnaire out of it, like final कि इसके बाद मैं अपने साइड से इस पे चेंजेस नहीं करने वाला, और like I won't be doing any more changes into it, and give it to at least 5. Okay, at least 5. I would send a paper related to it later if you like want after the session, how to do content validation. So at least 5 experts. Then ideally you can do more than that, and tell them to rate each question from 0 to 2 or 1 to 3 respectively. क्या होना चाहिए कि it has to be not required or like not essential, like this question is not essential, मतलब ये question हटा दो, ये question की जरूरत नहीं है, this question will not make any sense. Essential is like this question is required to answer the research question. Very essential is like this question has to be there for you to answer the research question. So जैसे जैसे वो experts वो rate करते हैं, based on that, after that you can remove a few questions as well to increase your content validity, or keep it like that if your content validity comes out to be greater than 6.5. Did I make sense? We need to submit questionnaire with proposal. Shumanta, I guess it's an optional thing, but we need to submit, right? I don't know.
Yeah, it's an optional thing. You do not need it to you do not need to submit it right at the proposal time, but you need to submit it at the report submission time.
Okay, so when you're submitting the proposal, you just have to submit the proposal, not the informed consent document, not the questionnaire thing, right?
You can, but it's not must.
Not necessary. That's what.
Yes,
Compulsory nahi hai. Even if it's if it's applicable in your study, you still did not submit it.
No.
Okay, but you have to submit this to your IC. Okay, so similar timeline pe yoga. So it can take thoda time, but start preparing it simultaneously only. Necessary by somebody. Yeah. Okay. Shall I move ahead to sampling and participation recruitment? So as I mentioned, for this, do consult your statistician because he will help you calculate sample size. Now sample size are determined by various formulas based on which study design you are using. So for cross-sectional study design and for surveys, we use a common formula that is 4pq by p square. But अभी उसमें limitation क्या है कि it might give a very large sample size which might not be applicable for you. Like this sample size is determined based on what is the existing prevalence of that condition. Okay, and if that prevalence is too small, then you will have to have your sample size in like almost 800,000 like that, and that might not be very feasible. So one of the tricks to it is if your study is very novel or like has a very good novelty and which जिसका prevalence उतना अच्छे से estimated नहीं है, then you say we are considering maximum variability and we are taking prevalence as 50%. So for that, ideally for any new kind of novel surveys and cross-sectional studies which are done, we take 384 as the sample size. Like in the while you substitute that in the formula, 384 comes in sample size. Some people round it off and consider it as 400. But even if you feel that that is too much for you to gather, then you label the study as a pilot study and then do it among 100 or 150 participants according to your condition. That is for only cross-sectional studies. Okay, case control studies or even studies which have two comparator wings has separate formulas, and in that your sample size might come much lesser, or like the total sample might only be 100, 120 depending on what kind of statistics are existing for that. So consult a statistician for that. Sampling techniques, this is a thing that most of the students ignore. Ki matlab, I would, we see that we think ki we'll go to all the people who are there in the OPD, we will start recruiting all the people who are coming, or we will circulate the online questionnaire among few of our friends, they will circulate it to more people, and then responses will keep coming. But what is important in that is the external validity of the study, or the thing that we call as representativeness. So जो population को तुम study कर रहे हो, तुम 100% population को तो नहीं कर रहे हो, but जो population demographics are there कि like proportions of male female जो है या geographical locations के हिसाब से जो representativeness है, proportions of age group जो है, उसमें से certain amount of variables we need to take into account and recruit them proportionally or on random basis, so that our data is generalizable. We don't have a selection bias into the study ki we are recruiting all the people who are conveniently available to us, because that has an inherent bias into it. Are you getting it? Yeah. So commonly used sampling technique again is convenient sampling or snowball sampling. So convenient is like you go to anyone who is available to you and tell them to fill the form, okay, or come into your study. The snowball is a bit more than that. Like you go to people whom you know and tell them to also invite people whom they know. That is what happens in most of our online surveys. Like You forward it to people, they forward it to more people, they forward it to more people. But again, this is not giving a representative sample because it is again going on basis of convenience. So what are the ways of randomizing things? So if you have an entire list of people whom you can approach, suppose you have the patient numbers of all the patients who are coming into it, then you can have a random number generator with you, like online random number generator mil jata hai. Based on that, on your sample size, you say generate almost 400 random numbers, and you will be from kitna, matlab suppose 1000 patients are coming, and out of that you have to select 400. So it will give you some random numbers, and you will be approaching that particular patient only. And that particular patient, if he denies to give consent, then you go to the next patient, then you go to the next, right? So that eliminates the selection bias into it. Then systematic random again becomes like if you're doing surveys of households, etc. Then households are numbered in certain way. So you follow a certain moment, and what you do is, suppose your sample size is 400 and there are total of suppose there are 5,000 households in that locality, and then you divide 5,000 by 400, and the number that you get becomes your n factor. So then you say, I will go to every 5th house or every 6th house to do this survey. That becomes systematic random sampling. Then in stratification, for example, I'll tell you, if any of the factors is becoming an influence to your study, like if you're doing a study of smartphone addiction or anything into a general population, then you know that it is more common in younger population, less common in older population. So that you have to stratify your sample accordingly to give a good prevalence estimate. So you have to see key in that particular area, what is the proportion of younger population, what is the proportion of older population, and in that proportion you will be recruiting that sample so that the prevalence that you get is generalizable into the population itself. Okay, so the difference between this and quota sampling is just that in stratified random sampling you will have to randomize things in each of the strata that you are going. Suppose you will go into schools to recruit younger population, then in that you will have to again choose random roll numbers. You will have to choose first random schools, then you have to choose random roll numbers, then multiple things come into it. So again, feasibility wise becomes a lot of constraints. So instead of stratified sampling, you can adopt quota sampling, that is good enough. Okay. There is a question. Okay, someone has answered it already. So personal advice, don't go for online surveys. Like they have increased tremendously during the pandemic. There has been a good amount of survey fatigue among participants already. You will not get good reliable data. You will not get good response rates. Response rates have reduced to less than 40% already. So even if you are doing small offline studies, it is much more reliable than an online survey. So even if you are doing an online survey, adopt a good sampling technique, like adopt quota sampling. Don't go for snowball sampling, does not have much of a reliance. Okay. And online surveys nowadays require a response from almost 800 to 1000 participants for it to be valid. So if you are doing an online survey in 100 200 participants, no one will publish it. So go for better kind of studies. So this was mostly the technical stuff, and now it's more of the general stuff. So choosing the right mentor, even Shumanta can chip into this, because how to choose an STS kind of a guide, I'm not very aware of. But what I would say is it should be someone who is more student friendly, has good interest in the topic that you have chosen, and has a good research acumen, because you are starting research from a very naive end. So he should be able to guide you well, and because there is no one else apart from you two in the study, so he has to be able to mentor you well. So he has to be very compliant, very student friendly, and help you with making the protocol, doing the analysis. Otherwise your study will stop at any point of time. What do you say, Sumantada? Are you there? Mantada is there?
I don't think he's there.
Okay.
I
we
am there.
do
I am
have-
there.
okay, okay,
Sorry,
okay.
I
Okay.
just lost audio for a minute.
Oh, sorry. I was just asking your opinions on like choosing a right mentor for STS project,
So
because it's a
when-
one guide, one student policy, right?
Yeah, it's a one guide, one student policy. So basically, I would advise to get a mentor who is directly let's say, wait, is my video visible now? Who is directly like professor of that subject. Like suppose you're doing a subject related, like you're doing a research related to, let's say, Clostridium infection among students. Sorry, among let's say you're doing a research in nosocomial infections. So I would request you to get a micro guide who has connections with the, let's say, surgery or ortho departments, and not directly approach the clinical departments, because the issue is they don't have time. The paraclinical subjects and the non-clinical teachers would actually help you. Like trust me, I'm giving you my example. I had a guide in pharma, but my guide was not actually my guide. My guide did not did nothing apart from signing my diet, like signing the AF and reports and everything else. The demonstrators, the people at surgery, they help more compared to pharma people. Or I don't know, because they were busy like designing the courseware for the new curriculum. Right now, just select a guide who you think would get comfortable with you, sitting with you at the OPDs, or would know that topic. Like if some teacher is a specialist in asthma, you can go with him with, let's say, like interleukin problems or NSAIDs problems, or let's say you just need to background research your guide and how you might be compatible with them.
Absolutely. And one of the other thing would be try to choose a younger professor. They're kind of more enthusiastic and they have more time. Like choose an associate. Don't choose a professor HOD. HOD would be, I would say, the last choice to choose, because they have the least amount of time and most amount of experience. So they will not be able to contribute a lot to your project. So choose an assistant professor or an associate professor who is a lot more enthusiastic and kind of will contribute more to your project. Okay, so that is some advice for your journey ahead. And I am guiding you to a treasure that I won't possess. I have never applied for STS, not applying this year as well, because as I said, this is a one student one guide policy, and I don't have a lot
It's
of
like
time
officially
to
it's one guide, but then unofficially
but you can
there
have
are
multiple
PFOs.
professors in your project.
Yeah, like you can get co-guides for your publication.
But then if you involve a lot more students, then they feel left out. Ki isko scholarship mil raha hai, and we are working and we are still not getting the scholarship.
Yes,
So even if you start this project, don't leave it if it is not approved. Okay, getting an ICMR STS approval or being rejected from ICMR STS does not mean that your study does not hold any significance or is irrelevant. Okay, do like take that feedback, inculcate those suggestions into your study, and continue with it. Okay, and as Shumantada mentioned earlier, it is going to take time out of your normal original academics, right? So while doing one study, it is easy to manage. Okay, I am doing 16 at a time, so you can at least do one. So why
that is a
so
lot. Trust me, I'm doing one right now. Like it's huge, I know, but then it's like even snowballing is hard. Paying the volunteers. Sorry.
Key to it is having specific times allotted for specific things, and multitasking does not mean you are doing 10 things at the same time, but one thing at one particular time and giving your whole dedication to it. So suppose you are now going to the process of proposal making. So then for the whole January, dedicate 1 or 2 days or two or 3 days to for studying, and rest of it maybe you can dedicate to proposal making, or other way around based on how much you like to study. So, and then eventually there will come a time in the data collection, in the analysis, where you will be frustrated You will not be getting data. You will be getting some skewed data. Your results might not be coming as you would be expected it to. Don't leave it there. Just keep going on. And even if at some point of time you feel you need help from some of your colleagues, you offer them authorship. You tell them, come help me with my study, and then see how it goes. But don't leave it incomplete. The process of publication is even more tedious. I'm telling you, once you have analyzed as well, once everything is ready, your manuscript is ready, you have submitted the report to ICMR, you have got the money, but your research to get published might take more 6 months, 1 year, based on how many journals reject you, based on, depends. So a lot more things to research apart from ICMR STS and just ICMR STS. So at any point of time, if you feel that you are very overwhelmed, just look back and see why did you start it, and just keep that motivation going. And I started this research for ICMR STS in 2019, but ICMR STS did not happen. So I did not apply, but I started it as a one student, one HO. My guide was an HOD, so it was one person only in the project. So then eventually when I had to start collecting data for almost 400 patients of a locality, which had almost 40,000 house, like people residing there. So I had to take help of few of my batchmates who agreed कि हम authorship लेंगे and we will help you with data collection and stuff. We did the data collection, we got our results, then it took almost 6-7 months to publish it, and finally once we published it, it was so relevant that it got published in Times of India as well. So that's what I'm saying. So relevance, dedication, interest, all these things matter much more. Okay, and always keep in mind like why you started it, why you want to do it, what change it will bring. That will keep you going. So that's it from my side. If you have anything to ask, you may reach out to me anytime, and let's open the floor for the questions now. Thank you, SAMSA and Aspire for having this talk, and Sumantada for enlightening about the procedure.
And
for
thank you,
STS.
Siri, for like explaining.
Yeah, thank you both of you for agreeing to join us and share your knowledge with us. So like before we go to the questions, to like kind of wrap up this entire thing, this wasn't in the brochure, I know, this is a surprise. We have 2 people who did their ICMR project like in the last batch, and I've asked both of them to share their experiences. One of them was me, so consent was easy to get, and the other guy he's here. So I'll go on ahead. So firstly, like one of the issues that we had faced during, like one issue I had faced was, since mine was a clinically oriented study, I needed the primary data from the individuals. So with the lockdown, it was incredibly delayed, and the bureaucratic process, which Shirish had said, that indeed took a lot of time, and that needs to be accounted for. Like right after your proposal gets selected, once they release the list and you can start your research, you should start with the ethics committee acceptance and the other such stuff. Apart from that, it was a lot of hard work. Like sometimes like in a month, it would be 20 days of actually following up on the proposal, getting the data, and the other 10 days for analyzing it. But I feel in the end, it should be worth it. The reports haven't released yet. And with that, I'd like to ask Nilarko to speak. He is my batchmate, and he also did his ICMR project in the surgery department.
Hello everyone, I'm Nilarko Bhattacharya, third prof part 1 student of Arjikar Medical College. Actually, this is completely an impromptu speech. Shaurjodipto asked me just 1.5 hours before at 6 o'clock in the evening to come up with something. He said that I would be giving you just 2 to 3 minutes, and I said that I would be a bit more generous and would probably take 5 to 6 minutes to share some of my experiences. Actually missed Sumantoda's speech, so I'm sad for that. But Shrish gave an extensive and very enriching talk, like the entire nitty-gritties of how and what to do. So it was a very nice experience listening to Shrish. Firstly, I would like to I would like to start where Shrish ended, choosing the right mentor. Firstly, I would like to say that since it is a one guide, one student thing, I think that you should choose someone with whom you share a bit of a good rapport. Means he doesn't necessarily be someone who has a good clinical exposure or research acumen. I would differ with Shrish at that point because you will find that along the SPS project, both you and your guide will learn things. Means your arena may be completely unknown to him, or he may be acquainted with it, but eventually you see that both of you will learn together. Means in this profession, all of us are facilitators at the end. Means there is very little teacher-student relationship, and mostly it's kind of a professional colleague relationship. So I think that it is better if you don't choose anyone with clinical from any clinical department, because from my personal experience, I chose one of the celebrity professors of our college. I would not mention his name, but uh, actually I had good rapport with him. So my project was easy, but eventually struggled a lot to get his time. So I would suggest choose someone from a preclinical or paraclinical department, because in the end, uh, you have to coordinate between the departments. It is not necessary that if you choose a particular subject area, you have to do your research under that subject area itself. Like I did my STS from the Department of Surgery, but pertaining to my topic, it was 40% anesthesia because it was on pain management, and 50% from psychiatry because I had to do pre-operative counseling. So means only 10% was from surgery, because basically my patient pool was elective laparoscopy patients. So it doesn't matter at the end of the day how much your subject area pertains to that particular department. Just choose a guide who can provide you with the time you need, the attention you need, and who is a bit means temperamentally is adjustable to you, have a good rapport with you, is communicable. The primary point is that the guide should be communicable. Like from my personal experience, I would say that during the second wave, it was May 2021, and one fine morning I called up my guide, যে স্যার ডিপার্টমেন্ট তো ক্লোজ হয়ে গেল, এবার কি করব? তো স্যার ওয়াজ লাইক, আমরা এখানে বাঁচা মরার জন্য ভাবছি, আর তুমি তোমার প্রজেক্ট নিয়ে আমার এখন কল করেছো, প্লিজ এখন কল করো না, পরে ভাববো। লাইক উই আর স্ট্রাগলিং হিয়ার ফর আওয়ার লাইফস ডিউরিং দ্য সেকেন্ড ওয়েভ, এন্ড ইউ আর কনসার্নড অ্যাবাউট ইউর STS project. So I said, but sir, the timelines have been revised, and ICMR is not replying to our mail. So what should we do? Sir said that leave, ছেড়ে দাও ICMR এর কথা. ICMR is too much in deep neck trouble themselves. They are tackling the entire COVID situation in the country. They are least bothered about STS right now. So coming to the point, I'm beating around the bush too much, I know. So the main point is that the greatest blow to ICMR, which I faced, and I think many of my batchmates too faced, here Manisha is there, Shagufta is there, Shaurjodipto is there, every one of them had done ICMR this year. So the greatest blow, I would say, to ICMR was COVID-19. Like every time we are going to the department to start our research, we are hearing that government has extended the lockdown. No more cold OTs will be performed. All the patients were sent home. One fine morning, I went to the department and asked, sir, my sample size is 40. How can I get these patients? I said, reduce your sample size. There is no way out. You have to reduce your sample size. You cannot get this much patients. So regarding the sample size, I would give a short tip, like keep your sample size small. Don't compromise with your sample size. Like obviously consult previous studies and take as much participants as you need, but cut it short. Means and it would be better if you design your study in such a way that you can get most of the data from existential health records, because we don't know how many waves of COVID are imminent. There can be a number of waves. So in the COVID scenario, it is very tough to conduct ICMR research, because the main aim of ICMR is patient interaction, and COVID gave a great blow to that particular side. Now, about Shrees had mentioned most of the aspects of all the research. I would just like to mention one thing, that before starting your research, you get your why part of the research very clear. Like, why are you wanting to do the research? It can be for various reasons. Like, you are a good thinker, you have certainly thought of one question and want to find the answer, so it is fine. And it can also be like you want to improve your CV and get the 20,000 or 10,000 rupees scholarship that ICMR provides, so it is fine too. But just get your aim clear. Like, in the middle of the project, you will you can go astray. Like, the thing I faced, like, I was I would say I was suffering from a lack of aim during the middle of the project, because firstly there was COVID. So I was like, I thought of 1,000 times of giving up my STS project. You, I, God forbid, I don't think you faced similar problem, but COVID really took a toll on my morale. But eventually I did submit. So thanks to my guide and thanks to everyone who helped me along the way. Now, secondly, about the statistics part that Shirish mentioned, you really need to get a good statistician. Like, it is one of the uh, pivot element of STS research. And for statistician, okay, there are some questions in the chat box. I will answer them after the speech. For statistics part, some disciplines who are very good with statistics are one department of community medicine in your college. You can consult your PSM department. They are very good with statistics in general. And any mental health professional like psychologist or psychiatrist or psychometrist, anyone, because most of the statistical correlation that we get are mostly devised from psychometric tests. So mental health professionals are very good with statistics in general. Means I personally took help from one of my sisters who is an MSc in psychology. So it was fine. It was easy. And now, okay, now I would end up my talk. It is far, means I have extended the time much than Shodzo permitted me to do. So some few tips I would like to give for your study. Like, one thing is to be clear that ICMR doesn't expect you to generate new data. Neither does it expect you to give a very good research. Means every ICMR knows that you are an undergraduate student, you are an MBBS student, so it doesn't expect you to give means an earth-shattering Nobel Prize winning research. It doesn't expect you at all to do so. The main thing ICMR wants is to inculcate the habit of research among undergraduate students. So primarily they see the, means while you submit your proposal and your report, primarily they see the format. If you are doing the research correctly, you are writing the proposal, the report in the correct way, as it is accepted by the international community. So just keep 4 points in mind while doing your research, that while writing the report there shouldn't be any plagiarism. So means your research should be original. You can means you can write from papers, you can translate it into your new language, means into your own language, but there shouldn't be any you shouldn't copy and paste from the particular website or the journals. For that you have lots of plagiarism checkers online, so you can always put in your, means after you have completed writing, you can put it in the online checker and they will give the result how much it is plagiarized and how much it is original. So this is the first point. Second, always, this is the most important point in ICMR. Like, the sole important point is to follow the format. Go to the ICMR STS website, learn it 5 to 6 times, how they say to write the proposal. Like you have to follow the format no matter what. Means I had heard from one of my seniors who had done 2 research projects during his tenure. At that time, 2 research projects were permitted in 1 MBBS tenure. I think ICMR has again started that rule, means we can have as many research projects as we want. So he said that 70% of ICMR proposals are cancelled just because they do not follow the correct format. So following the format, as they say, even ICMR mentions the font and the font size, the font pattern. You have to write your proposal in Times New Roman using a font size of 12. So they even mention that particular thing. So you have to follow the format. It is the most important thing. Thirdly, try not to make your study very obvious. Like, don't study the effect of study the extent of rise in eosinophil count during an infection. Don't make your study very obvious. Try to be a little bit different. It doesn't need to be very different, like very what I will say, very enriching and very insightful. It doesn't need to be like that, but just a bit different from the existing data. And lastly, keep your findings and your statistical analysis simple. This is also very important, because if you try to find too many correlations and too many determinants while doing the statistical analysis, it will eventually not only lengthen your report, but also it will make the thing complex. And ICMR doesn't expect an undergraduate student to do very complex research. It just wants to make sure that you have learned on your way, you have kept things simple, and you have means their main objective is to inculcate in you the habit of research. Shorjo is here giving me, nudging me to wrap up, so I won't take much time. So all the best to everyone who is here, and I would like to congratulate Shirish and Sumantoda. I missed Sumantoda's talk. I'm very sorry for that. So I would catch up the recorded video and see his talk, and Shirish gave a wonderful talk. So, and the last thing that last but not the least, don't get disheartened if your research findings do not match with your expected findings. Like you wanted to study the effect of routine prescription of PPIs on the gastrointestinal health of all the outdoor patients. Suppose your intention of study was to find the routine effect of prescribing routine PPI on all outdoor patients. So you took 10 patients from gynae, 10 patients from medicine, 10 patients of surgery, but eventually during your analysis you found that there isn't significant effect. It doesn't matter even if you prescribe PPI or not, the bowel health or the GI health remains the same. So even if your finding is a negative one, it is still a finding. It doesn't need to be only a positive finding. Many people I have found get disheartened. They even manipulate their data. They change their data to make the findings a positive finding. This is very unethical and very wrong. So even if your finding is a negative finding, it is a research, that is to a finding. That is an important part, because what I will say proving an existing data is also very important, and it doesn't always need to change the existing medical data. So that's all. I would thank everyone for attending this session. You can also think of joining SAMSA if you want. I'd like to thank SAMSA, Shaudhudipto, Sumantoda, and Shrish. So that's all. All the best, and you can always contact me if you need any help regarding STS. You can text me on WhatsApp. I think you'll get the number from the group or anywhere. I'd be more than glad to help you all.
Okay, thank you, Nilarko. That was quite a long 20 seconds you had promised. So anyway, so with that, are there any questions in the house?
Okay.
There were a few questions. Okay.
Yeah. So somebody asked me about how do you check for plagiarism in grammar. The basic answer would be to use Grammarly for your grammar and plagiarism if you want to pay for premium or just use Turnitin, like in case you get institutional access or any other checker you can find for free.
There was this question, is there need to learn biostatistics for proposal writing or report writing? Any course you could suggest? Well, I'd like to weigh in on this. So I had done this course by NPTEL on the website, the Swayam website. It is something offered by ICMR Chennai, and it covers the entire process of research and the how-tos and whatnot. And thus, I personally felt that I was well equipped to deal with the statistical analysis of my entire project. But once again, I don't think you need to be as efficient in biostatistics. I mean, to do a course, just it's good for it.
Okay, I would like to say that there is one app called Swayam by the Ministry of Health, Human Resource Development. It got started in the year 2020, I guess. So it is also a very good app. Means it has a website format also, and it provides many courses on deeper medical statistics, biostatistics, basic medical research. So you can also take up those courses. Means they're completely free of cost and very effective, I guess. Means I haven't done it, but those who did, they gave positive reviews about those. It is a government website, and also there are many the courses over means free courses from various universities. You can always take up those on biostatistics.
In case you're in biostatistics, I'd recommend you to go to SPSS and go through all the tests once so that you know which is for paired data, which is for unpaired data, and when you are
Shumantala, you're here. I think his voice, I think his internet is down.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I think this will be the last question for today. Someone had sent at the start, SPSS is not free. So is there any free statistics calculator that we can use? I'd like your opinions on this.
Yeah, so recently we found out a free software. It's named JASP. Okay. My friend had made a link for that and circulated yesterday. So I'll give that link to you as well, so you can send it across to. So JASP is the thing. It works similar to SPSS, has a very less MB content as well. It is free of cost, no piracy issues, etc. And all the tests can be done, like correlation, t-test, chi-square, etc. All of them can be done, and has a very easy interface as well. So anyone who does not know much to how to use it, it's very user friendly. Anything can be done on it. So I'll give you a link for that. You can then.
Yeah, sure. We'll send it in the group.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll wait for 1 or 2 more minutes if people have any further questions. Otherwise, I personally felt it was an amazing session, especially Shirish, your talk. I mean, it had stuff I didn't know at all.
You're really informative.
Yeah, exactly.
Even I did not know. Okay, yeah, the acronyms.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So yeah, if people would have benefited, if people have benefited from it, then great. How to collaborate in research?
Somebody is asking how to collaborate in other research projects. Okay, other research projects than STS. So. Okay, the easiest answer is find a person who's doing a research and just ask him if you can help him or her. That's the easiest way to become a co-investigator, but I guess
yeah, that's what. So if usually how I pursue it is usually we get ideas amongst our batchmates, and we tend to collaborate amongst our idea to divide the workload, delegate responsibilities, and accordingly do it. So you become a co-investigator to that. So regarding collaborative research, that's something that I advocate a lot, because that increases the accessibility for your study population and ease of data collection, right? So you connect to your friends on in different colleges who live in different cities, and by that also, by doing by doing it through online way also, you will get a much better representative data than doing it in your own college locality. So connect to more research communities, like you can join National Research Forum, there is Pan India Scientific Society, there are multiple student organizations like GCMER is there, multiple organizations are there. You can join any of those. You can get in touch with people, connect to people on LinkedIn, message random researchers, they will
Yeah, the LinkedIn is a very legit thing.
Legit social
LinkedIn
network.
actually works, I feel,
yeah,
especially
LinkedIn does
messaging
work.
random people.
Yeah, it's meant for that. We just don't know the power of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Monima, for your kind words. Monisha as well. Thank you so much.
Okay. Yeah.
So if we don't have any further questions,
Shorja, you can ask if they want to share their opinion about the session. Unmute
yeah.
themselves
They are
if
sharing it on
anyone.
chat only.
I'm giving everyone the ability to unmute themselves. If you want to, you can go
Like,
ahead and speak.
Or
I
we
think
can take
Manisha
a
also
group photo.
did STS, so she can also give
Yeah,
an opinion.
I
Would
think
be
she
very
did
nice.
that because
Manisha, if
I
you are
don't know.
comfortable, you can speak. Like,
Hello, good evening. Yes, I was
hello.
also a researcher of the ICMR STS 2020, along with Nilarko and Shojodipto and the others. And I felt that what Nilarko said was very, very close to my experience of the research. Because because the pandemic affected our research process so badly, because mine was also a clinical research based in the psychiatry department. I was not able to avail the OPD settings due to the lockdowns and due to the restrictions due to the general lockdowns. And um, one very important thing that has been touched on multiple times by different speakers is the rapport with the guide. My guide was also the head of the department of psychiatry, and he was not able to help as much in my process of the research. And a lot of the things I had to do myself, learn by myself. Over and over, it was an amazing learning experience that I maybe complained a bit about while being in the experience, but now that I have come out of it, I know that I have come out with much more knowledge than I went in with. The real time experience of the research is very different than the idea of research, and that is the most important experience that I got to have during this STS project. Thank you.
Thank you, Manisha, for your experience. Thank you for sharing your experience. Well, would it be possible for the participants to turn on their videos if we could have like one group photo virtual version? Okay, and people started leaving.
It's okay.
Yeah.
लोगों फोटो खिंचाना नहीं पसंद, जाने दो.
So, okay, taking a screenshot now. Okay, taking another in 3, 2, 1. Yep. Once again, so I'll be ending this meet, and thank you so much, Chuantoda,
Thank you.
Shirish, and Nilarko for coming and speaking. Even Monisha as well. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us. And I hope this was a really helpful session for all the potential STS participants. And with that, I'd like to end the meeting. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you, Shirish, for the wonderful talk, and thank you,
Thank you.
Shocho and Nilarko. Yeah, so I guess
Thank
we
you,
need to
Shumanta.
Shubham Dada.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Shirish.
Let's stop the live on YouTube first.